Finan City buzzed like a festival ground as the awakening ceremony began. A black-haired boy, Lin, jumped off Uncle Jen's cart, squeezing into the gigantic crowd. But 3 centuries ago, the world died, but 10 heroes refused to let it stay dead. Mana exploded, demons drowned the continents, and humanity survived only behind colossal barrier walls raised by 10 legendary classes. Time passed, legends became history. History became routine. And routine was about to shatter again. Now present statues of the 10 original heroes towered over thousands of anxious teens. Some whispered prayers. Some trembled. One girl begged the heavens for a legendary awakening. Lin smirked, arms crossed. Dream big, reality doesn't care. Rumors flew around. A new legendary class might appear this year. No wonder the crowd looked like a starving pack. But Lin had other plans. If everyone's desperate to get stronger, then business will be booming. A flare exploded across the sky. The ceremony had begun. The awakening hall. Names flashed, lights flared. A boy walked out with an S-class and 55 mana. Damn, I'd kill for that, the guy beside Lin muttered. Lin casually pulled out a tomato. This boosts mana by 5% for 5 minutes. The boy blinked, are you kidding? Nope, I'm Lin, spiritual plant specialist. He opened his bag. Day-lasting potatoes, slimming cucumbers, strength-boosting roots. A small crowd instantly formed. Scam. Better than energy bars. Hey, give me one. Lin raised a hand. Limited stock, first samples free. The skeptical boy took a bite. His eyes nearly popped out. Mana surged through him like he'd swallowed lightning. Before Lin could say another word, a man in a suit barged through the crowd. These are academy grade, he shouted. Then he tried to buy out the entire sack. Chaos, screaming, bidding wars. Lin lifted both hands. All right, I'll explain. I'm a Maxil farmer, my crops naturally carry buffs. The crowd exploded. Lyn's quiet life interrupted. Later, outside his tiny shop, the blonde guy from earlier returned. He handed Lin 10 gold coins, thanking him for the produce. Such talent stuck as a farmer, he joked. Lin glared, go home, your aunt is alone again. As the man walked off, Lin sighed. People once called him a genius. Until his awakening confirmed he was just a farmer. His father, an archdruid, would probably resurrect just to scold him. Still, he preferred the quiet life. Farming kept his mind calm. And kept his mother from worrying. But fate never leaves geniuses alone. A raindrop landed on his nose. He looked up. Something was falling. A man smashed into the ground before him. Blood everywhere. Did the walls fail? Are demons inside the city? Lin gasped. The dying man grabbed his collar. Listen, the legendary Necromancer, Hizang, he betrayed humanity. He plans to give his class to the demons. A purple beam pierced the man's skull. He died instantly. Smoke swirled. A dark portal opened. And the traitor stepped out. The legendary Necromancer. The Necromancer METS, a farmer. Hizang coughed violently, injured but sneering. Boy leaving without permission. His voice was cold enough to freeze bone. Before Lin could react, the Necromancer grabbed him. That corpse is Dean Yui, he hissed. And your blood will serve as my sacrifice. The oppressive mana crushed Lin's lungs. His vision blurred. Desperate, his eyes saw something. A fallen pickaxe, the dead man's tool. As if responding to Lin's will, one of his maxed-out farmer skills awakened. The tool lifted from the ground and flew into his grasp. Lin clenched his teeth. Sacrifices. Fine, but you will be the one offering them. The pickaxe slammed into the Necromancer's shield, cracking it. Hizang staggered back. A farmer hurt me. Before he recovered, Lin grabbed a strange hand cannon and fired. A torrent of blue energy roared forward, shattering the hall. His ang barely blocked it, his shield cracking like thin glass. He snarled, "Enough, your body will be my escape." His spirit ripped from his body, a black haze, and lunged straight into Lin. Darkness swallowed him. Lin screamed. The necromancer laughed inside his mind. A perfect vessel. But Lin's voice echoed back. "I've trained since childhood. If you want my body, fight me." Their souls clashed. Lin collapsed, shaking, gasping for air. His hand fell onto a jagged blade. He glared. "Fines, then we are both dying." He stabbed himself through the chest. The necromancer's scream echoed in his head. "No, no." A burst of golden light erupted from Lin's body. Chains of pure energy tore the necromancer apart, ripping his spirit to shreds. Silent. Then, a system window blinked into existence. "Congratulations, you have acquired Legendary Class Necromancer." Lin sat upright, alive. His reflection stared back with glowing purple and green mana spiraling around his fingers. His class began to mutate. Spiritual Farm Master. A fusion never seen before. A legend reborn from the fields. Using his new powers, he summoned two spirits. Dane Yui and the Necromancer. Now his loyal undead farmhands. He needed to hide. Fast. No one would believe a farmer killed two high-tier mages. So Lin vanished back to his farm. The mutant crops. But something was wrong. His crops glowed unnaturally. The necromancer's mana infected the soil. Plants twitched, bulged, then, snap, a mutated plant shot upward, bit a flying bird in half, and swallowed it whole. Lin screamed and tackled it with a shovel. After wrestling it into the dirt, he stared in terror. His mana could mutate plants into demon eaters. Terrifying, but also useful. Very useful. Then the TV blared breaking news. Legendary Necromancer Hisang has rebelled. Dean Yui is dead. Nationwide manhunt begins. Lin froze. If anyone discovered his necromancer abilities, he'd be executed instantly. He looked at his undead servants. "You two need normal names. Farmhands. No one questions farmhands." He sighed. He needed a place to train quietly. The Extraordinary Academy announced open enrollment. Perfect. Academy enrollment, chaos. The next day, Lin stood in the academy registration line. His name, Lin, Level 1, Spiritual Farm Master. Instructor Lee squinted. "That's a joke class, right?" Students laughed. "Farmer boy. Go plow the fields." Academy standards dropping fast. Lin ignored them. His fundamentals were monstrous, even at Level 1. When the instructor mocked him, Lin flashed the academy pamphlet. "Anyone can take the exam. You want me to call the administration?" Instructor Lee panicked, grabbed his phone and shouted at him. Rumors spread that the instructor had just been demoted and was extra sensitive. Finally, he dragged everyone to the exam site. A massive living labyrinth made of ancient roots. "Quit now, farmer," the instructor sneered. "Thanks for the advice," Lin said politely. Primary exam, the rabbit hunt. The labyrinth was brutal. A student was smashed by a vine thicker than a tree trunk. Lin crouched, studying the terrain. This isn't a rabbit hunt. This is industrial agriculture. He sprinkled carrot powder bait. A tiny horned demon rabbit hopped out. It took 2 bites. And Lin's undead farmhands pounced like assassins. He ordered them to sweep the entire labyrinth. They wiped out the demon rabbit population in minutes. The bell rang. Time was up. Students returned with 1-3 horns. Instructor Lee snickered. Farmer boy probably didn't get a single. Lin opened a storage ring. A mountain of demon rabbits poured out, burying Lee alive. 500, Lin said calmly. Want to count? The crowd lost its mind. The academy director appeared, furious at the chaos. Then his eyes landed on Lin. His expression softened. What is your relationship to Professor Lingshan? Lin blinked. He's my father, you know him. The director nearly fainted. You're his son, why didn't you say so earlier? If you need anything, I will personally. The director vanished mid-sentence. Lin stared at the empty air. He seems unreliable. The investigation. Elsewhere, investigators studied the deaths of Dean Yui and the Necromancer. One man slammed the board. His Aang's inheritance talent was stolen. The mastermind is still alive. Another man face-palmed. You're insane. Accidentally. The investigator was uncovering the truth. The director ordered. If anyone uses necromancer skills, kill on sight. Lin had no idea that a death sentence had just been put on his head. Retest level 5 dungeon. Back at the academy, the pink-haired instructor announced. All newcomers must clear a level 5 dungeon within 3 hours. The hall exploded in panic. Only Lin stayed calm. A shy level 7 mage approached him, asking to team up. Lin refused. He couldn't risk revealing his necromancy. She understood and wished him luck. He registered for solo entry. Instructors warned him he was insane. He entered anyway. Ending hook strong. The dungeon was silent. Too silent. Lin stepped forward. A creature crawled from the shadows. Low level, easy prey. But Lin didn't reach for his shovel. He raised his hand. Behind him, the shadows rippled. 2 undead generals stepped forward, bowing. Lin smiled. This is where my real cultivation begins. He activated undead summoning. And the entire dungeon trembled.
Manual had warned that the dungeon contained many monsters, but seeing this amount in front of him felt like far too many. The Feng stared at a massive cave filled with countless glowing red eyes peeking through the darkness. Lizard monster eggs covered the floor and walls around him. He looked at the sight calmly and said that this was a perfect time to try the new summoning method. A bright surge of purple lightning burst around him as he raised his hand and activated his skill, Undead Summoning. The lightning twisted through the air as monstrous shapes began forming. Moments later, those 2 lizards who were killed by Feng's undead before turned into lizard undead and appeared before him. Their bodies glowed with blue flames, their forms flickering like shadows as they waited for orders. Standing confidently, Feng pointed forward and commanded them to charge. From afar, the undead rushed out like a storm. Blue and purple energy streaks filled the entire passage, shaking the surroundings. Behind Feng, his 2 humanoid undead stood on the rocks, watching the advance. Watching those lizard undeads, Feng realized that beast-type undead kept some traits from when they were alive. They were aggressive but had low intelligence and could only follow simple commands. Feng observed them quietly. He noted that they consumed less magic power than others, but he wondered if they could do small chores like carrying water as well as fighting. Feng then sent his humanoid undead too. Those humanoid undead rushed forward, leaving trails of blue and purple light behind them. Both moved with sharp, deadly energy. The purple undead took out his long swords and struck first, swinging his long sword through the air. Powerful purple lightning wrapped around him as he slashed at the flying creatures in front of him. His attack scattered feathers and light everywhere. The blue humanoid undead formed hand signs and cast a spell. Blue energy gathered around him as countless glowing projectiles shot forward like energy balls, trapping those flying bird-like monsters. Watching those humanoid undead, Feng realized that they had higher wisdom. They could use the skills they had when they were alive and fought with more flexibility. Feng smiled with his hands on his hips, thinking that in the future he could let them handle chores like weeding and fertilizing the fields. By now, Feng's lizard undead had finished killing. Feng raised his hand and used his undead summon skill again. Sharp spear-like streams of magic shot outward as several lizard-shaped monsters' dead bodies blasted with necromancy energy. Suddenly, a bright system window appeared in front of him. It displayed a message saying he had leveled up to level 7. Now behind him many lizard and bird undead emerged. Their bodies burned with blue flame and their eyes glowed sharply as they floated around him. Feng looked calm and simply said that the efficiency was not bad. Feng then walked forward through the tunnel and reached a large chamber. Feng was amazed to see that he had reached the boss room in just half an hour. Suddenly, a loud metallic crack echoed as thick chains snapped apart. The ground shook as a giant bear-like monster came out of that massive cave. Its eyes glowed white, and chains still hung from its body while it roared across the chamber. Feng looked at the boss with a sharp expression. He said that since this was the boss, it was perfect for testing overall combat power. He called for all his undead to come out. All of Feng's humanoid and beast undead appeared behind him. Energy swirled around all of them as they lined up at his command. Feng then issued his orders. He told Heishao to handle the frontal containment. He told Yueye to curse and weaken the boss. He instructed the other undead units to attack the boss's joints and its eyes. On his command, all of his undead charged at the giant bear monster standing in front of him. They continuously attacked across its fur as it struggled and roared. In front of it, Feng sat calmly on a mat, a small snack box and his backpack beside him as if he were having a quiet break while the battle raged. He watched the ongoing fight and noted that the coordination of his undead was getting smoother. He was eating grapes, and system notification points popped up saying his magic power had recovered by 666 points, and it kept increasing as he ate more and more grapes. Then Feng's purple undead lunged at the chained boss. The boss monster swung its claws, but it did no damage to the purple undead, and it got closer to the boss. The purple undead collected huge amounts of lightning energy in his hand and punched the boss monster. His punch was so powerful that the whole ground exploded with a huge explosion. It was a massive burst of energy that swallowed the monster in blinding light. Immediately, a system notification appeared in front of Feng, showing that he had leveled up again and became level 8. Just as the bear monster died, a pile of glowing reward pouches appeared on the ground, shining with warm golden light. Feng immediately crouched down and examined one of the rewards in his hand. It was a strange red organ floating above his palm. Looking at it, he frowned in disappointment. He commented that the reward only increased his constitution by 10 points. To him, that was useless, nowhere near the improvement he could get from the supercrops he grew himself. But suddenly another system notification popped in front of him. It stated that the system was calculating the dungeon rewards. It confirmed his current classes, Farmer and Necromancer, and would distribute rewards for both. Immediately, 2 golden chests emerged before him, glowing with brilliant light. Feng was shocked to see them and realized that the dungeon settlement had actually given him 2 sets of rewards. He wondered if it was because he had dual classes. Then a sudden idea flashed through his mind, and a confident smile formed on his face. He said that if dungeon settlements could give double rewards, then there might also be a way to manipulate the crops he planted to receive even more benefits. Then after clearing the dungeon, Feng left the dungeon. As he walked out, everyone there, all the hunters, were shocked to see him. One of them muttered in shock, asking if he had really finished the dungeon alone. 2 of the hunters whispered among themselves, their voices filled with doubt. One shouted that it was impossible. Everyone knew how dangerous the inside of that cave was. There was no way he had cleared it alone. He claimed that Feng must have hidden inside just to save face and never gone deeper. Another hunter added that it didn't make sense. His clothes were spotless. There was no way someone that clean had fought through a swarm of magic beasts. But Feng didn't care what they said. He went to the mission center and handed over the mission scroll to that pink-haired teacher, saying he was there to hand in the mission. The pink-haired teacher checked the dungeon scroll in her hands, and a green confirmation mark appeared on the screen, confirming that he had completed the mission. Seeing that, the pink-haired teacher's eyes widened in shock. She couldn't believe that he had actually passed, and that he had done it completely solo. Fudge smiled softly. His expression remained composed, confident, and quietly satisfied with his achievement. Inside the academy's mission hall, the pink-haired instructor took the mission completion scroll from Feng. Her expression was calm yet serious as she spoke to Feng standing across from her. She said she would submit the scroll to the academic affairs office, but warned him that clearing a dungeon alone was still far too reckless. She added that if a freshman were to die in a dungeon right after entering the school, it would become a serious problem. Feng listened quietly, his usual composed smile returning. He nodded and replied respectfully that he understood and thanked her for the reminder. The instructor adjusted her glasses and smiled softly. She told him that the final instructor interview would soon begin in the academy auditorium and advised him to take some rest before then. Feng nodded again and turned away, walking down the bright hallway with his hands in his pockets. Behind the glass walls, a few upperclassmen noticed him leaving. They whispered among themselves, watching curiously as he disappeared around the corner. Seeing those upperclassmen watching Feng, the pink-haired instructor sighed lightly and pushed up her glasses again. She thought to herself that she hoped this experience would teach Feng a lesson. Being too bold or impulsive in the academy could easily lead to trouble. Outside, Feng walked through the academy's forest path. Sunlight streamed through the tall trees as a faint light barrier shimmered between the woods. Feng walked quietly through the forest path when he suddenly sensed something behind him. His eyes narrowed slightly as he realized that someone was following him. Behind the trees, a group of 3 boys hid awkwardly, each holding a cloth in front of themselves as they tried to stay concealed. Feng kept walking forward, lifting his hand casually as a faint purple magic circle appeared around his fingers. A little farther back, the 3 boys whispered nervously among themselves. One of them frowned and said that since Feng could clear a dungeon alone, his strength must not be simple. He worried they might mess up. Another one waved it off. He said that no matter how strong Feng was, he was still under level 10, so his strength had limits. The third added that Feng had just finished a dungeon, so his energy consumption must be high. None of them had seen him recover yet. Their confidence slowly returned. One of them smirked and said they would crush him with numbers. Another reminded the group how badly they wanted the demon bear gall that increased stamina by 10. When they saw Feng walking away, one of them urged the others to hurry and catch him. They shouted at him from behind, calling out, "Hey you farmer, stand still." Feng stopped and turned his head slightly. With a calm expression, he asked if they were shouting at him. The group stepped forward with aggressive confidence, surrounding him. One of them mocked him, asking if he wasn't afraid of bursting from taking so many rewards by himself. Another insisted he must have gotten lucky inside the dungeon and found something valuable by accident. He demanded that Feng hand over the demon bear gall and the skill scroll. All of them flared their combat energy, their bodies glowing with blue light. One boy pointed at him and warned that if he didn't act sensibly, they would show him the true power of a combat class. Meanwhile, Feng stood still, facing them quietly. Feng looked at the group surrounding him and asked calmly why. Out of so many examinees they had chosen him. One of the boys stepped forward, pointing at him with an exaggerated expression. He asked if Feng really didn't know the reason or if he was pretending. Another student explained that the exclusive reward for a solo dungeon clear, the demon bear gall, was a valuable item that added 10 stamina. He said that something so good was not something a farmer like him should be holding. Hearing that, Feng did a comparison in his mind of the demon bear gall, which increases stamina by 10, with his stamina watermelon, which also increases stamina by 10. Feng squinted slightly and wondered if something that added 10 stamina was really that amazing. He thought about the watermelons he grew every summer, which also added plus 10 stamina without needing to fight through a dungeon. Then he lifted his hand and took out the demon bear gall from his inventory. Red energy curled around his fingers as he showed the item in his palm. He asked if the thing they were talking about was this. Seeing that, the man with the short hair immediately lunged forward with an angry expression. He stretched out his hand toward Feng and shouted for him to give the item to him. But suddenly a fireball exploded between them the moment he reached out. A violent blast of fire and smoke burst outward, filling the area with heat and golden light. The shockwave pushed the short-haired man back as he stared at the spreading flames in surprise. In the next second, a pink-haired girl rushed in. She held her staff in front of Feng and glared at the troublemakers. She demanded to know what they were planning to do. She reminded them that private fighting was forbidden in the academy and warned them that they could be disqualified. The short-haired man raised his weapon and tried to explain. He insisted that the matter had nothing to do with the pink-haired girl and that it only concerned Feng behind her. But the girl stepped forward without hesitation. Her eyes narrowed as she said that if she couldn't stand what she saw, then it absolutely had something to do with her. She lifted her staff, flames swirling around her as she made her final threat. She told them to leave immediately, or she would report everything to the instructor and see who would suffer more. Hearing that, the man with the fierce grin looked straight ahead, his expression full of arrogance. He spoke with confidence, saying that reporting the matter would only work if she even got the chance, and since she insisted on protecting the farmer, they would deal with her as well. He raised his voice and shouted to his group. He ordered his brothers to attack quickly, telling them to finish the battle fast. 2 of his men rushed forward together, each holding a weapon glowing with blue energy. They charged toward Feng and the pink-haired girl standing in front of him. As they came closer, Feng quietly observed the girl. He noted that she was currently a level 7 class user, which meant she should be quite strong. He wondered if she was capable of handling all these small fry by herself. The girl, however, glared forward with clear anger in her eyes. She said that their methods were truly dirty. Then she turned slightly and asked Feng beside her if he would like to join forces. But before she finished speaking, she spun around in surprise. Feng was already running away at full speed through the forest, leaving her behind without hesitation. As she watched him escape, Feng threw something toward her. It was the red glowing demon bear gall. She reacted instantly and caught the demon bear gall smoothly with one hand. Her eyes widened slightly as she stared at the item she now held. The red energy curled around her fingers. Feng raised his hand with a bright smile on his face. He thanked the pink-haired girl politely and said that the thing he gave her now belonged to her. Before the pink-haired girl could even react to what had just happened, those three men rushed toward her with furious expressions. Their bodies glowed with blue energy as they leapt forward. Seeing that, the pink-haired girl shouted loudly, wondering why everything had suddenly turned into her being robbed when she had just come to help Feng. The scene then shifted to a quiet room. It was a temporary independent restroom. Inside, Feng sat on a sofa with a towel around his neck. He took several scrolls out of his backpack and wondered why the skill scroll he got from the dungeon was useless to him. He paused for a moment. His eyes narrowed as an idea struck him, and he wondered if it could be like that. Feng then held the scroll between both hands. Green and purple mana surrounded it as he injected his energy into the scroll. That energy swirled around it like flames, and in the next second a system window suddenly appeared, stating that he had realized a new skill called Special Cultivation. Another window explained the skill. It was a beginner-level special cultivation skill that allowed him to use mana and certain materials to strengthen undead summons. It said there was a chance to increase their level, their quality, or give them new skills. Seeing the system notification, Feng jumped in happiness, saying it really worked. He explained that the scroll required mana from both of his classes at the same time in order to activate. Feng then summoned all his undeads. The tall shadowy figure of the largest summon stood in front of Feng, its body wrapped in purple and blue lightning. Feng stood shirtless in front of them. He lifted his hand with confidence and told them that it was time to test the new skill. Green energy flickered around Feng's fingers as he focused. His expression stayed calm as if he already knew the result. The tallest summon, Hei Kui, was the first to react. Purple flames burst from its body as its power rose sharply, and a glowing message appeared beside it showing that it had advanced from level 6 to level 8. Next, the summon with the icy armor, Yu Ye, was covered in swirling blue energy. Its strength climbed rapidly, and it rose from level 6 to level 8 as well. The demon-horned bear followed soon after. Blue light wrapped around its heavy frame, and its level jumped from 7 to 9. Two smaller summons, the horned lizard and the horned eagle, glowed together in bright blue light. Their combined levels increased, rising from level 5 and 6 to level 7. Watching all of this, Feng tilted his head slightly. A small smile appeared on his face as he nodded in satisfaction. He said softly that it was not bad at all. He stood facing his newly empowered summons. Purple and blue energy stormed around their bodies. The huge figures of Hei Kui and Yue Yu towered in front of him, both stronger than before as they waited for his next command. Watching them, Feng lowered his eyes, and a quiet thought formed in his mind. He said that the only bad thing was when he would be able to obtain new fields because he couldn't bring himself to ruin the fields at home just to experiment on new crops. Then sometime later, he walked out of his room, wearing casual clothes and a backpack. He stepped through the doorway with his hands in his pockets. But as he was closing the door, suddenly that pink hair appeared and called out to him. She brought up the demon bear gall. Feng turned slightly, and lightly smiling, told her that the demon bear gall was hers. Hearing that, the pink-haired girl's eyes widened. She held a small package tightly against her chest and shouted that the item was very valuable. Hearing that, Feng stared at her with a tired expression, his eyes half open. He muttered that there was no need to treat such rotten material like a treasure, and after saying that, he left from there. The girl froze. She repeated his words in disbelief and asked if she had heard correctly, rotten. Feng left the resting area and walked deeper into the forest where tall trees covered the area. He was very deep in the woods. He looked left and right and thought that there shouldn't be anyone around. After confirming that no one was around, Feng activated his skill and purple energy gathered around his hands. He wondered what effect the new skill had on crops. The purple energy spread toward two nearby plants, wrapping around them. The plants reacted as the power hit them, growing in some strange way. Feng looked at the plants with a confused face and commented that they looked no different from before when he used his skill on his farm, but suddenly, his eyes widened as he realized something was different. In the next instant, the plants exploded into a huge transformation. A monstrous flower burst upward with sharp teeth and vines rising high above him as purple energy shot around the forest. Feng's expression was filled with surprise as he looked at the plants in front of him, asking if these two crops could actually move. His eyes were wide and he seemed unable to believe that the crops could really move on their own. Elsewhere in the forest, another figure sprinted across the treetops with great speed. The spirit energy detector in his hand glowed and he shouted that the energy reading was getting closer. That man was Tuka, who landed on another high branch. He checked the readings again and said that his guess was right. There was the aura of a necromancer somewhere in the area. A moment later, Tuka reached the forest path. Just as he walked forward, he noticed Feng with a backpack passing by. Tuka suddenly stopped and turned around quickly, staring at Feng. Then he reached out and grabbed Feng by the shoulder, stopping him. With a suspicious look, he asked if Feng was a farmer because he looked like one judging his clothes. Feng leaned closer and asked Tuka if a farmer had provoked him. Tuka's face then shifted into a look of mild disgust, his eyebrows tightening as he examined Feng in silence. Then Tuka raised his voice, calling Feng. Farmer demanded to know if he had seen a strange person appear nearby. Hearing that, Feng lightly touched his chin and answered that he actually had. Hearing this, Tuka leaned forward in excitement and urgently asked where the person was. Feng lifted his hand and pointed directly at Tuka standing in front, saying the strange person was right there. Hearing that, Tuka froze for a moment, then his expression turning red with anger. Flames rose behind him as he shouted, asking how dare Feng humiliate him. He angrily declared his status, an elite of Sunwheel Academy and the nephew of the Iron Lion Duke. His rage only grew stronger. He yelled that a lowly farmer dared to be rude to the nephew of a duke. Fire wrapped around his arm as he swung his fist forward, shouting that he would kill Feng. Tuka transformed into a wolfman, his body surrounded by violent green energy. He shouted that the lowly farmer would pay for his stupid words and actions. The green aura surged wildly around his body as rocks and debris were thrown into the air. Feng was pushed back by the impact. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and planted his feet firmly on the ground. Stones shattered and dust burst upward around him, but he remained standing. His expression was calm and his eyes were cold. He stated that the farmer Tuka looked down on could defeat him with one hand. Tuka laughed and lunged forward with glowing green energy swirling wildly around his body. His claws were raised as he charged straight toward Feng. He shouted for him to taste his attack. However, Feng's expression remained calm. As he noticed something strange, he thought that although he didn't know why the aconite from his field had changed after being corroded by undead magic, it had gained a paralytic effect. He said that the last time he tested it, he had been numb and stuck in bed for an entire day. He added that grinding the aconite into powder really worked as a narcotic. Tuka's face twisted as he inhaled the narcotic. Dark particles and green energy clung to his fur. Moments later, his eyes spun, stars circling above his head. His body swayed unsteadily, and his whole body started feeling dizzy. He looked down at his own body in panic and demanded to know what had been done to him, shouting angrily as he asked why his strength had suddenly disappeared. Feng stood calmly in the forest. He raised his fingers to his nose casually as he walked forward. With a calm expression, he said that it was just some common aconite powder from the fields. Then he leaned forward, green energy flowing around his arm. With a calm but sharp expression, he said that this was the kind of power farmers had. In the next moment, green streaks burst forward. The attack struck the beast directly, slamming into its body and overwhelming it before it could react. Later, the scene changed. The former elite Tuka hung helplessly from a tree, his hands tied above his head. His shirt lay discarded on the ground, and he was left wearing only his shorts. His body looked weak, and his eyes were dull. Not far away, Feng stood quietly and mocked him, saying that he could not even beat a farmer yet still dared to call himself an elite. As he turned to leave, Feng calmly told him to enjoy cooling off there for a while. He added that when someone eventually found him, he should consider it a lesson learned. Just then, an announcement echoed through the area, calling all candidates to gather in the auditorium for the instructor interviews. Standing in the forest, Feng paused. Realizing the interviews were starting, he muttered that he needed to hurry. The scene then shifted outside the Extraordinary Academy auditorium. Groups of candidates stood around, quietly whispering among themselves. As Feng walked forward calmly, voices followed him. Someone whispered that he was the one who had solo cleared the level 5 dungeon. Another voice replied that they heard he only ran away and leeched off women. Unmoved by the whispers around him, Feng continued walking toward the auditorium with an indifferent expression. Among the gathered candidates, someone spoke in a low voice, saying that compared to Xian and Bogu, he was far worse. Another voice followed, saying that he might be strong compared to normal candidates, but as level 5 elites they already had the advantage. Nearby, a pink-haired girl stepped forward and handed something to Feng, telling him that it was his. Feng scratched the back of his head and smiled faintly. He leaned forward and told her to keep it, saying that it was really useless to him. Later, Feng walked through the crowd while eating casually. A notification appeared above him, showing temporary stamina +2 twice. Looking confused, he thought to himself that he truly did not understand why people treated that kind of thing like a treasure. Inside the auditorium, the scene was marked as the instructor interview site. Several instructors sat behind a long desk, watching quietly. A voice explained that during the interview instructors choose students, but students also choose instructors. It was said that students and instructors bring out the best in each other. The instructor then announced that he would call students by name to come forward. He called out the first name, Shi Yen. Shi Yen stood up among the seats and introduced himself. He said that his name was Shi Yen and that he was a level 6 Earth-type warrior. He then spoke again, saying that this was his current ability. As he finished speaking, a large battle armor appeared, surrounded by glowing energy. One of the instructors leaned forward and spoke. He said that it was not bad and introduced himself as a level 44 Earth-type berserker. He then asked Shi Yan how about becoming his instructor. Shi Yan reacted immediately and said that he would be honored. After that, the instructor announced the next name and called Ying Wu forward. The instructor looked down at the list and called out the next name, saying it was Lin Feng. Lin Feng stood up from his seat and walked forward calmly, moving past the other candidates. As he stepped into the center, he introduced himself. He stated clearly that his name was Lin Feng and that he was a level 8 spirit farm master. As he spoke, green energy rose around his body, surrounding him as he stood there in silence. The two female instructors watched Lin Feng from their seats. The woman with pink hair commented that reaching level 8 at his age was very impressive. The woman beside her leaned closer and reminded her to look carefully, saying he was still just a farmer. Across the table, another instructor leaned against his colleague and spoke casually. He said that their extraordinary academy trained talent for the front lines, not ordinary people meant to be cannon fodder. But he also admitted that Lin Feng had performed very well in both the preliminary and second tests. The main examiner adjusted his monocle and looked at the others. He cleared his throat and suggested that since everyone had different opinions, they should run a combat ability assessment for Lin Feng. After hearing this, the instructors began giving their responses one by one. The man with long dark hair crossed his arms and said he agreed. The woman with pink hair smiled and said it worked for her. Another instructor leaned back casually and said he didn't mind at all. Lin Feng stepped forward as the examiner called out to him. Green energy swirled around his feet while the examiner asked if he was willing to take the combat test. The examiner added that their goal was to train people who could fight demons on the front lines, and without combat ability, things would be difficult. Lin Feng lowered his head slightly, thinking to himself. He said that his current combat strength wasn't very high, and he wanted to fight without exposing his necromancer abilities. Lin Feng lifted his head with a small smile and agreed. The scene then shifted to a large open space that had been temporarily marked inside the auditorium. Students and instructors stood around the edges, watching as Lin Feng walked to one side of the marked area. On the opposite side, a tall man waited for him. The instructor explained the rules with a wide grin. He said that the evaluation was simple. Lin Feng only needed to last 5 minutes under his attacks, and if he managed that, it would prove he had talent for combat. As the match began, bright golden energy burst out from the instructor's body. The force spread across the arena, shaking the air as powerful waves of pressure shot in every direction. Students nearby bent down under the weight of it. Some trembled as they struggled to stay balanced. One of them gasped, saying that this was the pressure of someone above level 40. Another said he could barely breathe. But when they looked toward Lin Feng, they saw him crouched lightly on the ground. His posture was steady, and his expression stayed calm. Someone watching said in surprise that Lin Feng looked completely fine. The instructor smiled proudly as he looked at Lin Feng. He told him that just for enduring the pressure, he had earned his respect. Then he opened his stance and said that Lin Feng should use all his power and attack with everything he had. Lin Feng lowered his body, steadying himself against the golden pressure. He thought to himself that the pressure from a level 44 fighter was intense, but he could still endure it for now. A glowing green orb formed in Lin Feng's hand as vines of nature energy swirled around him. He stretched his arm forward and called out for his servants to come out. Green light burst upward. As the shapes formed, Lin Feng realized something. By covering the undead in nature magic, he could hide their undead aura. The summoned figures rose wrapped in bright green vines and leaves, completely concealed by the nature energy surrounding them. Lin Feng stood beside the glowing green figure he had summoned. The large creature looked like a cabbage-shaped bear covered in swirling nature energy. As he watched it, he thought that no one would ever guess this cabbage-looking bear was actually an undead summon. The creature stepped forward, wrapped in bright green vines. Its body glowed strongly, making it look like a rare mutant beast. From the other side of the arena, the instructor narrowed his eyes in surprise. He said that this kind of dense nature magic looked like a rare mutated profession. A smile grew on the instructor's face. He raised his curved blades, lightning-like energy dancing around them. He called out to Lin Feng, saying it was interesting and telling him to come at him. The green cabbage-like bear rushed forward, its body wrapped in bright nature energy. Across from it, the instructor charged in with yellow flames swirling around his weapons. Both figures clashed in the open courtyard, their energies filling the space. Bright streaks of green and yellow flashed everywhere as the two forces collided. The instructor swung his blades with great force while the glowing creature pushed back with its nature power. In the next moment, the instructor went flying upward. His face twisted as he let out a loud scream and charged straight at the cabbage-like bear. Bright yellow sparks burst around the green creature as the instructor's attack struck it again and again. Even while taking heavy blows, the glowing cabbage-like bear stayed standing, its body shaking from the impact. One of the instructors watching from a distance looked surprised. He said that any normal summon would have disappeared by now, but this one was still holding on. The green creature then roared and rushed forward, pushing through the attacks. Yellow and green energy clashed wildly as it charged straight at the instructor, refusing to fall no matter how badly it was hit. One of the instructors looked at the battlefield with sweat running down his face. He asked calmly if Old G was starting to get tired. Lin Feng stood nearby with a relaxed expression. He thought that his summons were undead, so they didn't feel pain or complain. He said that small injuries could be healed easily with a bit of magic. Old J watched Lin Feng and wiped away sweat. He admitted to himself that he originally wanted to show off in front of the students, but now he realized Lin Feng had real talent. He thought that he would need to get serious. Old G then looked directly at Lin Feng. He told him that he would compensate him for the destroyed summon, and asked him to watch closely. The instructor explained that normal summoner professions had to pay a price to make a contract with their summons. If the summon was destroyed, it disappeared, and the contract ended. The instructor activated a powerful skill. Golden energy exploded around him as the words Berserk skill Bloodthirst appeared. He rushed forward with overwhelming force and struck Lin Feng's green summon. The impact shattered the creature's body. Pieces of green energy scattered everywhere as the instructor stood in the center of the blast, holding his curved weapon. After the attack finished, the instructor stood proudly with his arms crossed. Golden flames wrapped around his entire body. He looked completely confident, satisfied with the result of his strike. The instructor looked at Lin Feng and spoke with a mocking smile. He said that losing a summon must hurt and told Lin Feng to go ahead and cry. He added that he liked straightforward, emotional students the most. Lin Feng stood behind him with one hand near his eye, pretending to wipe away a tear. But in the next moment, green energy slowly rose around him. His face turned calm and blank, showing no sadness at all. The instructor stared at Lin Feng in confusion. He wondered why the boy didn't look upset at all. He questioned if Lin Feng was so overwhelmed that he had gone past the point of showing emotion. Just then, green energy suddenly spread out from Lin Feng's body, stretching across the ground like long twisting shadows. The green energy then rose sharply, wrapping around the instructor. The vines and shapes tightened around him, lifting him slightly as he shouted in surprise. He complained loudly, asking how many summons Lin Feng actually had and accusing him of playing dirty. The atmosphere turned tense. A burst of golden energy exploded around the instructor. He destroyed the green energy wrapped around him and the force pushed him backward. He shouted in panic as the green power twisted violently through the air. A moment later, the examiner stepped forward and raised his hand. He calmly told them to stop. The instructor relaxed and Lin Feng stood off to the side, his ghostly blue summon fading beside him. The examiner then faced Lin Feng with a composed expression. He said that Lin Feng had proven himself and was now qualified to become a student of Extraordinary Academy. He continued speaking, explaining that all nature-type instructors were currently on rotation at the front lines, so for now there was no teacher available to guide him yet. Lin Feng looked calmly at the examiner, a faint glow of green energy still drifting around him. He asked what would happen to his cultivation resources. The examiner faced him and answered without hesitation. He said the academy would never shortchange any student's cultivation resources, and that Lin Feng would receive everything according to the standard. The man then adjusted his monocle and continued speaking. He explained that, because Lin Feng was an outstanding student in this exam, he was allowed to make one request to the academy. Lin Feng's expression shifted as he listened. A faint light flashed in his eyes, and he murmured that freedom and cultivation resources together were basically heaven. In the next moment his tone became cheerful. He stood before the examiner with a bright, almost childlike smile and said that he wanted a plot of land. The examiner froze. He stared at Lin Feng with a confused expression. With disbelief on his face, he asked if Lin Feng really didn't want rare resources, high-grade gear, or top-tier items and only wanted land. Lin Feng scratched the back of his head with a bright, carefree smile. He explained that his profession was spirit farm master and said that he couldn't be a master without land. With a cheerful expression, he asked the director if he agreed. The director sighed in defeat. He stood with his hands in his pockets and said there was a training wasteland on the west side of the city that had been unused for a long time. He told Lin Feng he could do whatever he wanted with it. He also added that if Lin Feng had other requests in the future, he could come find him. Lin Feng stood opposite him with his backpack, bowing slightly as he thanked the director. The director told Lin Feng to go rest in the back and called for the next student. The scene shifted to a view of the school courtyard, where groups of students were gathered below the tall buildings. Images of the sky flashed by, and then the view moved to a wooden door with a sign that read Principal's Office. Inside, a file was opened, showing Lin Feng's photo and his information. Sitting at the desk, the principal looked through the documents. He raised his eyes slightly and commented that Spirit Farm Master was quite an interesting profession. Just then, a woman with pink hair rushed into the principal's office and announced that she had an urgent report. The principal looked up from his desk and asked what it was. She handed him a document. The report stated that Tuka, a member of their investigation team who had been tracking He Xiao, had been brutally killed by a necromancer. She explained that the body was found close to the auditorium and they now suspected that a necromancer had already slipped into the academy. The scene shifted to the western city training wasteland. Lin Feng walked alone through a quiet forest path, holding a paper map in his hand. While studying the map, he muttered the location to himself and then smiled when he finally found the place marked on it. A moment later, green flames rose from his hand as the usage rights document activated. A glowing message appeared, stating that he now had permission to use 100 moments of training land in the west of Fengchuan City, granted by the Extraordinary Academy. Another message followed, explaining that a temporary lease agreement had been activated. The duration was 1 year, and a repulsion barrier had opened, allowing only the student Lin Feng to enter the area. Lin Feng touched his ear with a bored expression and complained that 1 year was really stingy. Then he added that most students would be heading to the front lines after a year anyway, so the limit made sense. Lin Feng raised his arms toward the sky with excitement. Purple energy swirled around him as he shouted that a full 100 moosh of land was his for at least a year. With joy on his face, he said that this finally felt worthy of the title Spirit Farm Master. A burst of purple light erupted around him. Lin Feng stood at the center of the glowing formation, pointing upward as the energy expanded across the wasteland. One by one, powerful spirit creatures appeared within the purple mist, towering shadow figures, glowing armored beings, and various small floating sprites. They surrounded Lin Feng, filling the sky with bright energy. Lin Feng looked at them with confidence and stretched out his hand. With a fierce smile, he pointed forward and declared that everything was ready. It was time to get to work. A dark, shadowy spirit released a violent burst of purple energy. The force shook the ground and sent rocks flying in all directions as the creature landed with immense power. Not far away, another summoned spirit, one made entirely of blue water, rose into the air. Waves erupted around it as it flew forward, controlling the water beneath it. On the field, a large fluffy beast with a horn rushed across the soil. Its body glowed with bright energy as it dashed ahead, followed by several small floating spirits carrying tools. The scene then shifted to Lin Feng relaxing under the sun. He lounged on a chair with sunglasses on, eating a slice of watermelon. With a satisfied smile, he commented that magic really did change life, and said the ancients hadn't lied. Lin Feng rested in the shade, calmly drinking from a straw. A small blue spirit tapped his shoulder to get his attention. Without changing his relaxed expression, he spoke softly and said that the land had been reclaimed. Hearing this, Lin Feng looked surprised. He turned around while holding a slice of watermelon and stared at his summons behind him. He said they were far more proactive than he expected. One of the undead let out a strange laugh, its glowing mouth curling in an eerie smile. Lin Feng looked at the ice-armored undead standing beside him. With a helpless sigh, he said that expecting undead to have their own consciousness might have been asking too much. Lin Feng finished eating and walked toward the doorway. Meanwhile, the ice-armored undead watched him leave. Its glowing eyes followed him quietly, its expression calm and unreadable. A faint smile slowly formed on its face, the cold blue light around its body flickering softly. Lin Feng walked along the narrow path beside the long row of greenhouses. A faint glow surrounded him as he placed his hand on the glass, checking on the crops inside. From above, the greenhouse roof revealed rows of planted soil beds. Lin Feng stood among the neatly arranged crops, looking up as soft blue light filtered through the glass. Different plants filled the space, some shaped like budding yellow lotuses, others like purple cabbages. Lines of text floated above them, showing their effects: permanent stamina +1, temporary speed +1, permanent attack +1, all labeled as not yet mature. Lin Feng looked at them with satisfaction. He said that other people had to gain strength through bitter and exhausting training, while he improved himself through crops, balanced nutrition, and a solid foundation. Lin Feng stood inside the greenhouse, turning his head to look at the glowing crops behind him. He said it was a shame that only his crops could produce these effects. He added that if his yield were larger and everyone could improve through these plants, then the demons would become nothing more than weak chickens. Lin Feng walked through the narrow glass corridor holding a shovel. Sunlight filtered through the greenhouse walls as he stopped and thought about his situation. He said he couldn't plant only special crops. He needed enough normal crops outside to hide them. Otherwise, the strange plants inside the greenhouse would be discovered too easily. He tightened his grip on the shovel and said it was time to get back to work. One day later, the scene returned to the greenhouse under a bright blue sky. Inside the soil, a cluster of round potatoes sat packed together as Lin Feng used his tool to dig them up. Lin Feng stood beside the field with a shovel in hand. He faced the shadowy summoned figures beside him and demonstrated the motion, telling them to dig like this and instructing them to watch carefully. The shadowy helpers immediately followed his example, shovels in hand, digging quickly in a neat line. Seeing their work, Lin Feng smiled. He said that ever since he got these helpers, the speed of planting vegetables had increased dramatically. But suddenly Lin Feng shouted in surprise, asking what his helper was doing. One of the shadowy undead creatures held a potato in its hands, taking a bite out of it. Lin Feng leaned forward with a confused expression. The undead creature froze, startled as it looked up at him, still holding the half-eaten potato. A glowing system window then appeared beside it, showing its status. Undead lizard, level 6, temporary. Bone density temporarily increasing. Defense temporarily increasing. Lin Feng stared silently at the notification, looking down in thought. He thought that all of his undead lizards came from the dungeon and the only difference was that this particular one had eaten a potato. Lin Feng then raised his hand to his chin, thinking seriously. A burst of realization formed in his mind as he wondered if the original crop effects could also work on undead creatures. In the days that followed, Lin Feng continued running systematic experiments. He carefully recorded how different crops affected the undead he controlled. However, he was not aware that someone was watching his field. A shadowy figure with glowing red eyes stood in the darkness outside the farm, staring toward the sheds. Under the moonlight, he muttered to himself that the place looked bizarre. He noted that several structures weren't there the last time he had been spying on the area. He crouched forward and looked again, repeating that those things definitely hadn't existed before. Then his expression hardened. With a smirk, he drew a sharp blade and scoffed that a paper-thin wall like that would fall apart with a single slash. He paused after seeing something else inside. Only one person seemed to be there. That made him wonder if it was some sort of trap. He called the situation interesting. Meanwhile, inside, Lin Feng lay relaxed in a hammock, unaware of the intruder who was now watching him from the shadows. As the intruder crept across the rooftop in the dark, moving closer to the greenhouse, suddenly the ground beneath him cracked. A sharp impact struck the edge of the roof, forcing him to jump back in surprise. He landed and sprinted forward, but more blows slammed into the concrete, sending chunks of rubble flying everywhere. The man dropped low, bracing himself as the ground shattered around him. A moment later, something burst upward from beneath the debris. A round creature with a glowing red stalk rose into view, its body swelling with energy as it pushed through the broken stone. The intruder glanced toward it, only to face a sudden explosion. Rubble and flames erupted outward as the creature launched an attack, forcing him to dash aside while the blast tore through the rooftop. The blue-haired intruder narrowed his eyes with a smug smile. He looked completely confident as he mocked the defenses around him, saying that this level of protection could never stop him. He charged forward and kicked through the round creatures blocking his path. As his foot struck them, red liquid splattered out, and more of the creatures burst open under the impact. Suddenly, his expression changed. Sweat formed on his face as he realized something was wrong. He gritted his teeth in panic and shouted in frustration. A moment later, a massive chain of explosions erupted beneath him. Bright yellow flames burst outward, scattering debris, and red burst through the air as the detonations consumed the entire area around him. As the blast faded, a strange green light rose from the darkness below. A glowing tree-like figure slowly appeared, its branches twisting like veins of light. The green glow spread across the space, and long streams of energy gathered around it. In the next moment, the figure began to change shape. The branches wrapped together, forming the outline of a woman made entirely of green light. Her hair flowed like living vines, moving with the energy surrounding her. The man burst through the smoke, cursing under his breath. He shouted in frustration, saying he wouldn't have come back a second time if it wasn't to gain the Grand Duke's trust. He lowered his body and charged forward through the thick dust. His face twisted in anger as he raised his blade. Blood marked his cheek, but his grip tightened. He growled that once he chopped the creature into pieces, he wanted to see if it could still explode. He swung down with full force, his body glowing with power. Blue energy trailed behind his movement as vines and explosions burst up from the ground beneath him. Then his expression changed. He stared ahead in shock as he noticed something strange. He realized the monsters carried traces of an undead aura. Confusion and alarm filled his face while purple light flickered beside him. He remembered that the Elder had told him that on this scouting trip to Fenchuan City, his main mission was to find the Necromancer Heishao. He explained that Heishao had disappeared right after their last contact, even though he had made a deal with their clan. But now, seeing traces of undead energy from here, he realized this location was actually Heishao's hiding place. Confusion crossed his face as he wondered why Heishao was hiding here and whether he had betrayed their clan. He continued walking forward with a knife in hand. Purple mist drifted around him as he muttered that Heishao had no shame when it came to his immortality techniques. Finally, he looked up toward the moonlit sky and decided he shouldn't stay in this place any longer. Finding Heishao was what mattered most, so he jumped away from the area. The next day, Lin Feng stepped out of the building with a hoe over his shoulder. He wiped his face and said that he had already catalyzed and fertilized most of the plots yesterday. He added that he only needed to take care of the remaining areas. But when he saw his field, his expression suddenly changed. Sweat ran down his face as he looked toward the distance in shock. He rushed forward and saw a collapsed greenhouse surrounded by broken rocks and shattered ground. Standing at the edge of the destruction, he stared at the ruins and shouted in disbelief that his greenhouse was gone. Just as he was worrying about his greenhouse, suddenly, a huge shadow crossed the bright sky as a black dragon flew overhead, its wings cutting through the sunlight. Lin Feng looked up from the ruined greenhouse, his expression tightening as he turned toward the sky. He let out a quiet sound of confusion as he stared upward. Moments later, the dragon descended, and two figures stood firmly on its back. One was tall with long black hair, and the other stood beside him with a calm posture. The dragon's red eyes glowed as it hovered above the ground. Lin Feng stepped forward, staring at them in disbelief. He wondered aloud why law enforcement officers had appeared here. The two law enforcement officers stood side by side, red energy swirling around their bodies. The man holding a folder looked at his device and reported that the magic detector showed the source of the magic aura was right here. The tall man beside him listened with a serious expression as the other wondered how a place that used to be a training wasteland had turned into something like this, questioning whether a demon might be hiding there. A small device floated in the air, displaying a message that the land had been leased. The officer with glasses read from his notes and said that although someone had already rented the land, they still couldn't rule out demon activity. He reminded his partner to stay cautious. The two law enforcement officers stood outside the barrier. One of them raised his hand and greeted Lin Feng inside, saying they were from the law enforcement team. Inside the barrier, Lin Feng looked confused and wondered why the law enforcement team had come here. The officer with glasses stepped forward holding his device. He explained that their instruments had detected a magic aura in the area and asked Lin Feng to open the barrier so they could inspect it. The two officers waited as the barrier glowed between them. The taller officer said they didn't know the exact situation yet. Lin Feng stared at them through the barrier and questioned how there could be magic aura on land he had only rented a few days ago. Meanwhile, outside, one of the officers grew impatient and complained that even getting a farmer to open a barrier took this long. The tall officer then spoke again, saying that Tuka had just been killed by demons, and now demonic energy had appeared here as well. Flames rose behind him as he stepped forward, his eyes glowing red. He looked toward the barrier and declared that, in his opinion, the man inside was clearly a demon spy. Inside the barrier, Lin Feng stayed silent, a drop of sweat running down his cheek as he watched them with a tense expression.
This the end of this episode. If you want the next episode, please comment below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Love you all and bye.